And we are back. Welcome to the SoapBox, the place where people who work, volunteer, and care about recovery tell us who they are and what they are most passionate about. My name is Rich Jones. I'm your host. I represent parentingyourchildinrecovery.com and secondstarts.com. That's number two, NDSTARTS.com. My special guest today is Martha Burich. Hello, Martha.
Hey, Richard, how you doing?
Yeah. Martha is a dedicated parent, educator, speaker, and author with a passion for helping others. She's a child psychology professor, right? And she has been in education, high school education, special ed for 16 years. Okay. And she's the
Yes.
author of Yes, You Can Raise a Happy, Responsible Child. And she's an advocate for growth and resilience, focusing on parenting and substance abuse recovery. Hello again, Martha. How are you? And thank you for being here.
Oh, I'm very, very happy to be here, Richard. Thank
Well,
you.
thank you, sir. Martha, I like to start off the show by letting you just give that Cliff Notes version of who you are and tell us about Martha. Introduce us to Martha.
Well, you know what? I was an unwanted child, and my mother loved my brothers better. And I bring that up first to say that guess what? In spite of all that, I still managed to have the career I wanted. I still managed to complete school, get college education and more, and be a teacher and a college professor, which were always my dreams. So the very first thing I wanted to say to people is, you know what? Tomorrow is another day. And just because something happens today has nothing to do with your ability to succeed tomorrow. And in fact, today is the day that we need to get things done and to do what we can. But that's pretty much me in a nutshell.
Okay, Martha, I was glad to have you here. We're going to have a great discussion here. But before we move on, I just want to say, remember, it's very important to everybody that in this show, our show notes section is very important because we're going to include all the information you get about Martha, including her current contact information and her future projects and her thoughts about the recovery process. So it'll be more than just this show. So we want to expand on this. And also, you can get information for parents and mentors of young adults between the ages of 17 and 24 about a unique non-clinical process that works with any intervention you may be using now. Okay, Martha, let's get right to it. I want to put you up on the soapbox. I want to hear what you've got to say. So, Martha, step on up to that soapbox. Okay, Martha, tell me about.
Well, you know, let's
Go ahead.
no, you go ahead. Question.
Tell me about your thoughts about using the word no, because that was interesting
All right.
what you talked to me about. I want you to expand on that for me.
That's a really good question. You know, I have a parenting philosophy. It's called the three L's of parenting. And the first one is love them enough to say no.
Okay.
People who don't take no for an answer become very unpleasant human beings for others. They have bad relationships and they cause problems in society also because they can't say no. They don't say no to themselves. So they become obese, they become drug addicts and alcoholics, and they have other problems. Um, uh, Dealing with basically life. And so they seem to think that everything should go their way. Well, we all
Mhm.
know, such as life, things don't always go our way, do they?
Right.
So, next, let your children fail. So, the first
Okay.
L is love them enough to say no. And then you have to let them fail. And then you have to lead by example. But yes, no is very important. And but also, we need to learn how to say no to children and other people in a way that preserves their dignity and helps them grow rather than feel diminished.
Okay. Martha, let me a quick question for you then. Being an educator, professor, and high school special ed, were you able to use that mindset in what you were doing, using the word no and letting them fail and mix that together? Was that something you could do?
Well, you know what? People are going to be people. And if we keep letting them get away with bad behaviors, with things that don't serve them, it's kind of like if your child runs out in the middle of the road. Are you going to just let them? Of
Right.
course not. You're
Right.
going to say no. You're going to come back. You're going to grab them back, and you're going to say, "We don't do that." And here's why we don't do that. And if I see that you get close to the road edge again, you're going to have to always be next to me. I can't give you any freedom whenever
Right.
we're around the road. So we have to set up conditions to help children be successful. And we also have to be mindful of their age. There are certain ages when they have to be watched all the time. They simply don't have the mind, the ability in their minds to know what's dangerous and what's not.
Okay, that's a very, very good answer. Now, talk to me about your idea about being an example. How do you see that? Talk to
Well,
me.
how can you tell your child to get off their phone when you're on your phone 24/7? How can you tell your child to go out and play when you're sitting in front of the television most of the time and you don't get outside and get any sun or air
Right,
or exercise? So, how can you tell anyone, stop smoking, don't drink, and here you are with a drink in your hand and a cigarette? So,
right.
if we want, do as I say, not as I do, never was a very good parenting technique.
Hmm.
And you can see a lot of unhappy people who and unhappy parents who somehow, well, I tell my child, actions speak 100 times louder than words. And
Right,
we children and people watch your actions. How many times have you been with people and they're always flapping their jaws, talking,
right.
but their behavior doesn't match up?
Exactly, exactly. My thoughts exactly, Martha. I'm glad you said that. Uh, is there anything else uh, you've learned in those years of education, and especially, and kind of link it together for me with your thoughts on recovery and help with parenting? I mean, you know,
Yes. Um, well, that goes with being a good example and um, being there for your children. I found a lot of people in recovery, Richard. They seem to have this idea that if they don't have drugs and alcohol, that's their fun. So, a
right,
lot of people they party on the weekends. So they go to work Monday through Friday, and then they seem to live for their partying. And that's my relaxation, that's my rest.
right,
Well, in actuality, it's really robbing you. You're robbing yourself of having real success and real peace of mind and real ability to get things done. You know, um, a person can accomplish more in a year who doesn't do drugs or alcohol than someone who does in 10 years, even if that other person even ever accomplishes anything.
right,
Because so many people, then once you get stuck in that drugs and alcohol cycle, well, you're constantly looking for the dopamine hit. Oh boy, what else is going to make me feel better? I got to have
right.
something to make me feel better. I got to have something to forget this, forget that. Well, that just doesn't seem to make for a very satisfying, productive life.
I agree 100%. I agree 100%. Um, let's once more again. We want to remind everybody that the show notes are maybe the most important part of this show because you get to meet Martha, but she's going to have more for you in the show notes and more things. And you can dive into what she has to offer, which we're going to get to in a second. So that's very important, including her contact information, which we keep our notice her email on the screen so you can contact her if you need it, because I'm sure she's speaking to a lot of you parents out there who want to work with your child in recovery or any child, because she has a wealth of educational knowledge here, which we don't want to waste here. And also for the parents of mentors of young adults between the ages of 17 and 24, a unique non-clinical process that works with any intervention that you may be using now. Martha, I want to get into this specifically. Tell me about your projects because I noticed you have a 4-week parenting class. Well, what is that about?
Yes, I have a four week parenting class, 1 hour a week on Zoom, and we will dive into the why behind your child's behavior. All behavior has a reason, and figuring out that reason. Does your child want attention? Does your child want power? Do they want revenge? Or do
Mm,
they want a display of inadequacy? And each one of those four goals requires a different response. But also, you don't know what the goal is. The way you figure out the goal is how you feel. If your child is basically just wanting attention, you're annoyed. They're constantly wanting attention. You're always like, oh, now what do they want? What else do they want?
mhm.
And so you're annoyed. If the child wants power, you feel usually frustrated and aggravated. If they want revenge, or if they want power, you feel anger. And if they want revenge, you feel sad. You feel like, why is my child doing this to me?
Right,
And when they have a display of inadequacy, that's a child who's constantly, oh, I can't do that. I don't know how to do that. Nothing ever works for me. And that child, you have to really, really um, work on that without condescending to the child. You have to
Hmm.
force the child to meet standards, but then you can't demand too much from them because they're already in a very depressed state. So each of those requires a different response, and each child has a major way that they operate in the world, where the need for attention, the need for power, the need for revenge, or that display of inadequacy. And we thoroughly cover that in 4 weeks. And within 4 weeks, we're going to get your child turned around. We're going to get things turned around in your life if you do what I tell you, just like I did what I was told many years ago when my son was so difficult and I had success. And I remember each week we would come back and say, and the teacher would say, well, how did it work this week? We worked on a different skill each week. And I would say, boy, it worked really well. But other parents would be like, no, it didn't work for me. And I finally figured out the difference. These people told me that these techniques worked. And, I said, as long as I don't have to hit my child or be mean to my child, I'm going to do what they tell me. And that's exactly what happened. So no matter how much he pushed back, no matter what happened, I would continue to push and do the technique, and it always worked.
Okay.
I never gave
Now,
up.
now the emotional strength workbook, is that something that is included in this course, or is this something different, something
The
separate?
emotional strength workbook, that is for addiction recovery. Now,
Okay.
the parenting course includes, your the worksheets and the information to help you figure out your child's goal and to help you work on that goal. So that is included in the parenting course. But the emotional strength workbook, that is something that helps you if you have addiction problems and you're ready to stop, or if you have been stopped, it helps you to gain the strength to stop with this. Oh my goodness, I'm overwhelmed, I need a drink. Oh my goodness, I'm bored, I need a drink. Oh my
Right.
goodness, so and so hurt my feelings, I can't handle that, I need a drink. This helps you develop that emotional strength so that you can live a life and be a good example.
Okay. Martha, talk to me about your book. Seemed very interesting. And I haven't.
Yes,
It's
yes.
it's on my reading queue, but I haven't read it yet. In all honesty, so talk to me about it and enlighten us. If you,
It's only 60 short pages, and it's just all here's what you do. Here's what you do. If you're at the grocery store, the child won't behave. Here's what you do. You're in the car, the child's making causing problems, won't put their seatbelt on. Here's what you do. You want to strengthen your marriage. Here's what you do. You want to raise a smart child. Here's what you do. It's all information. Yeah, how to increase your child's self-esteem, how to have a more secure family. How to get your children to cooperate. It's all meat and no fluff because it's the information that helped me turn my son around when he was young. Also, it's the same information I use to help my students. For the
Mhm.
16 years I was a high school special education teacher, and I've helped really literally thousands of people turn their lives around. It's the same information I use when I go to the jail and I talk with the substance abuse users and the treatment center, because basically, and you probably know this already, Richard, too, we're all just big kids. We just want somebody to attend to us and appreciate us and see the good in us. And too often nobody notices anything about us except for what we do wrong. And that's
True.
the number one thing I tell parents is, you know what, why don't you start focusing on what your child does right, and then we'll work on what they do wrong.
Okay. I wanted to ask you a question. Do you have a problem with you get the ear of an adult or a parent, and then once you get the ear of the adult and the parent, then do you have a problem getting them to actually listen to you, or once you get their ear, they're listening to you, or do you have to go through twice, first to get their ear and then to also convince them that this is the correct way?
Well, you know what? If they need the help, they'll come. If they're not ready, it's just like alcoholics and drug addicts. If they're not ready, if they're, you just like when I was in those parenting classes, some of the parents, they would come back and go, yeah, I tried it, but it didn't work for me. Yeah, that because they gave it a half-hearted attempt. The more you give into your children, the longer they're going to have a tantrum and be difficult when you finally learn to say no. And so if you can't handle that, and that's what's exactly going to happen, the parent will put their foot down and say, no, we're not going to do that. Well, then their tantrums are just going to last longer and longer. And the child is definitely probably, and many times they're going to outlast the parent, because the parent's like, oh, okay, I've had enough. Here, take back your phone. Here, go out and play here, whatever it is that you here, well, have an ice cream, just stop, having your tantrum.
Right.
Well, you've just lost again, and you've just made it ensured that the child is going to act even worse the next time you try to
Right.
improve that behavior. So if you aren't ready to, deal with some pretty heavy behaviors, um, you and your child are just going to continue to suffer.
Okay.
And I
I have
really
another
think that
question.
this is the reason.
I have
Mhm.
another question for you. This is on my mind as, going through us getting ready to do this. When did you decide that you were going to deliver this type of information? I know you went through many years as an educator, but when did you decide that maybe you might write a book or maybe you might be the one to carry this message forward, a message that helped you yourself? So when did you decide and how did you decide how you were going to carry this message?
Oh, that's a really, really good question, Richard. Well, I wrote the book years ago and put it in a drawer. And
Okay.
just a couple of years ago, I opened that drawer and thought, "Whoa, I need to get this published. This information changed my life. I need to get it out there." So, I attended when I went to even in high school. I wanted to be a psychologist. I
Okay.
always wanted to help people live better lives and be happier because I had terrible problems with social anxiety and just difficulty knowing how to be around people. I was very shy and reserved, and I had to learn how to come out of my shell. And in college, I learned about behavior modification, and that really wowed me. I was like, wow. So you can help people behave better by structuring their environment so that they can be successful. There's this book called Toilet Training in a Day, and
Okay.
I bring that up because it was written by two psychologists who worked in a home for the mentally disabled, and they would be able to take children with very, very low IQs and adults and toilet train them in a day. And just because they structured the environment in such a way that made it easier for those children to be able to do that behavior. And that's how many things are. If we make it easy enough for people to behave correctly, they will.
Okay. Good thought. One last question. Went through my mind just recently. When you say you go to the jails, what reaction do you get from the inmates? I'm assuming you're talking to different age groups, or do you just specialize in the younger inmates? How does that work?
Well, I see the women only. I go to the women, and
Okay.
I go to the jail to take and basically an Alcoholics Anonymous and Narcotics Anonymous meeting. So the ladies that come to my meetings, they're ones who believe they have a problem and want some help in getting rid of that problem because a lot of them are in jail because of drug and alcohol problems.
Right.
So, and I get them from all ages. And I've had many success stories from the jail. One woman was a meth addict and she was in jail. She was pregnant. And fortunately, she stopped the meth. The baby is almost 2 now. The mother has never gone back to drugs or alcohol. And they're having a second child. I mean, and she's an absolutely fabulous mother, and that was all because she came to meetings and made a decision. I'm not going to continue this anymore. I'm going to grow up and be a good parent and a good citizen.
Okay. So Martha, what do you get out of this? Okay. When you go
Mm.
and you're successful and you see your book, and the book's already out, you're having people purchase it. What do you get out of it? How does it make you feel? I mean,
It makes me feel very, very happy because it's the same information that absolutely changed my life and saved my family. My husband and I, and we were all just so miserable because our
Mhm.
son was so spoiled and difficult and did not accept no for an answer. And we did not realize it was because we indulged him and tried to make his life easy. The easier you try to make someone's life, the more pampered and difficult they become. It's by overcoming challenges that we learn to deal with life. And let's face it, Richard, every day, as evidenced, with your technology problems today, every day is
Hmm.
problem after frustration, after annoyance, after, delay, and it- we, in order to be mature adults, we have to learn how to handle those
Right.
difficulties in a mature way without ruining everybody else's day. Yes, this is unpleasant, but is it the end of the world? No, I don't want this to happen to me, but is it the end of the world? We have to start putting things in perspective and stop being such big babies. And I'm really speaking of myself because sometimes I'm a big baby, but at least now I don't make anybody else, I just kind of say it to myself, this shouldn't be
Okay.
happening. Well, guess what? It is happening, isn't it?
Yes, it is. Yes, it is happening. That's what you say. It's not. This can't be happening. Oh, yes, it can be happening. Okay. Tell me about what's Martha do for fun? What's Martha's hobbies? What does Martha do?
Oh, what do I do for fun? Well, I walk the dog. I have a rescue dog. He's 7 years
Okay.
old, so I like to walk the dog. I like to challenge myself to do more and more steps. The dog and I are up to, let's see, what did we do? 2 days ago, we did a 5 mile walk.
Okay.
And so we've built up from, a half a mile to 5 miles. So I really enjoy that, getting outside now that the weather's nice. I really enjoy getting outside. I really like doing things, writing, reading,
Okay.
and learning. So that's pretty much who I am. And I'm very big in the Alcoholics Anonymous community. I go to
Okay.
meetings,
That's
and a lot of my time is spent at the jail and the treatment center helping others.
okay. Good. That's good. To hear. What kind of dog do you have? What kind of dog did you rescue?
We believe he's a lab pit bull mix. Yeah, we
Okay.
got him when he was 4 months old from the animal shelter. He has a little deformed back paw that made
Okay.
him so that no one else wanted him, but we sure love him.
Oh, that's great. Martha, I want to remind everybody again, make sure you check out those show notes. The section is very important. You get all the information about Martha, including her contact information, current and future projects, and we will keep up with you on that and our thoughts on the recovery process. Also, information for parents and mentors of young adults between the ages of 17 and 24. You're looking for a unique non-clinical process that works with what you're doing, and also a section for practitioners that want to, work with us. Please look down in that show notes section. We're going to be putting this show on our YouTube channel. That'd be Second Starts. That's number 2 NDSTARTS. You'll see it at the top of the screen there. Uh, we have a YouTube channel on Parenting Your Child in Recovery. There's also a YouTube channel and our other outlets, LinkedIn, Facebook. We'll put it all over. Martha will have it also, so you can, revisit with Martha. I'm sure that the information that Martha had is extremely timely and extremely useful in this day and age when you know, we're threatened with everything and frustrations only boil down back to the parents and they always boil back down to the child if you're not controlling your frustrations. So that's very important. So, Martha, with Martha and myself, we want to thank you for being with us. And we want to have you remember, and I'd like to say this at the end of every show, remember to help somebody get better, help somebody stay better, and help somebody be better. Thank you. Thank you, Martha. Thank you, everybody. Have a good day.